we got Tara Allgood, is it?
Yes.
From the United States. Hello, Tara. Come in.
Hello, Miles. How are you today?
Well, it's freezing bloody cold here, but we don't need to tell everybody about that. It's not. It's actually not freezing cold. It's one of those wet colds. Where one thing about anybody from England or Ireland is they always talk about the bloody weather.
Right.
Okay, so we won't talk about the weather. And I've got the bases. What you can't see where you are is I've got bases TI behind me. But depending on where I sit, I can make it look like asses TI, which is make things a bit of a. I'm deliberately trying to make things a bit jovial.
Hey,
but
let's do it.
Okay, explain about what's going on.
Well, that's
who you are.
Question.
And
okay.
Why have you contacted me and why you contacted Bases? Now, you're saying a wee bit close to the camera. It looks great. But
Okay.
no, that's fine. Yeah,
Sure,
great.
okay.
Good. Just feel
Okay.
free. Okay.
A little bit about my background then.
Yeah.
And some
In other
people...
words, what I'm actually basically saying is why should anybody pay one blind bit of attention to what you're saying? And what are you saying? What this is all about? You're talking about the Kennedy Space Center secret space program, yeah? Space school, TIs, the military.
Yeah, I did go to
Over to you.
Space. Yes, I was 12 years old and I stayed there for 2 weeks. I won an award. The shuttle actually went off behind me. I know this sounds like such a cheesy, corny story.
So what they're saying is that the United States space shuttle was only launched because you got an award.
No, absolutely not. I'm saying
it
was...
You mean it wasn't launched just because you got an award?
No, the space camp was probably scheduled along with the launch.
Oh my God! So it was just because the launch was happening. Now explain to people
it was like a synchronicity.
Yeah. When you mention something like space camp or a set of initials, could you please explain what that is so people can follow you?
Space camp. What do you mean, a set of initials?
Well, sometimes you just, in our previous chat, which was off camera, you mentioned a couple of initials. People might not understand what that is, and it's always a good idea just to let people know what you're actually talking about. Does that make sense?
I can't, I have a hard time recalling like what I just said because...
Yeah, I'm the same, but space camp, what is that? Is it a thing you do at college or school or what?
It was something that was around in the 80s. There was even a movie about it when there was a big push for people to go into the space industry. Now, I live in a county where the space station, the space center, Kennedy Space Center is. So I was
You're talking Florida and not Houston, okay?
Correct. I was in Young Astronauts, the gifted student programs, accelerated math. I was sent to the space camp as an extracurricular sort of an activity by my family, my father, However, in hindsight, putting my life together, I see the patterns and I recognize that situation was probably more than what I was able to perceive at the time. But that's definitely not the crux of my story. That's just one little example of how positive feedback, positive behavior modification can be used. So basically what I experienced was attempts to train and program my psychology after mind mapping me at a real physical hospital, okay? I get feedback from people sometimes and they think I'm talking about all this stuff in the astral. And no, when I'm talking about my programming and certain abuses, this was real physical hospitals, physical doctors, physical psychiatrists, physical engineers, top secret people, and then there's the whole astral component, which is a whole other level. But one thing about my case, which is why I would like to talk out, is because I'm one of the few people who has been focusing solely on deprogramming for a long time. I've had help from professional deprogrammer. Are you familiar with the book by Fritz Springmeier, How to Create a Controllable Mind Control Slave?
Well, I might be, but for the sake of argument in the audience, it's probably a good idea to give a little bit of a description on that. And could you look a little bit to your left? I think
Like
it is. Yeah, no, not too much. Just split the difference. That's great. Okay.
So there's some books out there that explain about how monarch mind control programming is done. There's been some books written by some people who have survived it, like Kathy O'Brien and Bryce Taylor are two that come to mind. Fritz Springmeier, it's my understanding he had a girlfriend or a wife who was a programmed individual, and that was how he got into this whole realm of things, looking for help, ended up consulting someone who specializes in deprogramming, and that person gave him the information about the systems, the monarch mind control systems that he used in the book, as far as color codes, as far as how it operates, all that stuff. So that was my deprogrammer, the expert. So he assisted me, and we're still in touch. He assisted me as far as he could take me. Okay. So I have basically a semi-open system. In other words, I'm aware that I have at least 25 deliberately created personalities. I had amnesia walls between.
Now, how are you aware of that? Why 25? Why 20 or 15? What made you aware of that sort of situation? And could you try to look in the middle? I know you're looking off center, but no, split it other way. Sit to your left. Yeah, good. And actually, if my camera's distracting to you, I might turn it off, actually. If you could sort of try to look straight sort of into the screen, because you're looking way off it.
I don't understand where I'm looking. Okay.
Yeah, look there. Whatever you just looked.
Right there?
Yeah. But you're off to your... You try and recenter yourself. Great. And sit a wee bit further back, or raise the camera a bit, because we're cutting the top of your head off. Great. Yeah. Now you're still looking off to the right-hand side of your screen. Or the left-hand side. Right. Okay.
Is that better?
If I point up at the you see this is because I'm off. This. Okay, you're looking. Okay, you're looking off to your left, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's
so
great.
Do you want
No, other way. Look straight at the camera. Keep yourself square on the camera. Right. Forget about me. Don't bother looking at me. I think it's probably a distraction because I'm off to my right here.
Okay.
Okay, so we're okay. Right, where were we? We're talking about Fritz.
Okay. Why I believe I have 25 altars. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have to be careful because I'm about to go sign something saying I won't talk about a specific person, but
well, you haven't signed it yet.
No, I haven't.
And if you don't, okay, right. If you don't want to mention a name, or if you feel that's not a good thing, just don't do it. Remember, this could be seen in a year's time or whatever.
You already admitted it on air anyway.
Okay.
I'm about to say, so it's not a big deal.
Sorry, I'm going to do two things. One is I'm going to try and get as much information so that people can understand and hear it, but that may not be in your interests to do that, okay? So don't do it if it's not in your interests.
Right, okay. So I don't mind answering this question. I had suspected that I had 24 altars for years because when my psychic abilities were being ramped up, I could actually see in the astral within myself what looked like a clock with 12 lines. And then eventually it came to my understanding that each of those pies were divided in half as well. And I think it was like a masculine, feminine, or positive, negative thing. And so I say 25 because I am developing a consciousness aside from all of those that is uniquely me now and representative of the awareness of these things, altogether. The overseeing consciousness is what I had to develop in order to escape just being a pawn playing out my programs and routines. Because within each of my altars, I had programming very much like you would put into a computer. So if certain command prompts run, a routine script goes, and I act out a certain loop or contact certain people or do certain things. Someone very close to me who had connections to very high-level people within powerful societies, who was very concerned for me, took it upon himself to do his own investigation. And when he did that, he was astounded to be told by that group that I had been used and passed around more than anyone they had investigated before. And that they knew for a fact I had at least 24 created. And that was in the file on me that the secret society had. So he confirmed basically what I already had seen within myself, and it feels right. It's at least that. And I don't have them all open. So my attention span is very challenged by the condition of my mind because of the fact that because there's amnesia walls between the altars that were split, because all the information that they knew was supposed to stay secret and contained and away from any other part of my mind, to the point of if I was given truth serum and tortured and stuff, that I would just go crazy and not be able to access it myself. And I know for a fact that's what happened because it happened to me when someone tried to access my system who was unauthorized. So anyway, it's hard because my mind, although there's still amnesia divides between parts of me, I have to kind of take turns and observe what's going on. And so my attention span can seem very shortened. My memory can have a lot of problems, especially short term because of that, so I want to put that out there so people understand. And my whole desire is to be able to speak to other survivors because I have not seen real voices of reason and compassion out there able to speak about these things in depth in a real rational sort of way. And that's what I'd like to do. And I know I don't have all the answers. I don't. I have more questions than I have answers, but I'm questioning.
Well,
and
that's
I'm not
excellent. That's really excellent, because the point about that is you're taking control.
Exactly.
And that is why I prefer the use of the term empowered individual.
Yes, I like that. I like that a lot.
Good. And I have to say, the person who inspired me to say that was a woman called Solaris Blue Raven. Have you heard of her?
I have heard of her. Actually, her name came to my mind earlier today, so that's coincidental.
Have you thought of talking to her or something like that?
No. Let me explain a little bit about my background with the truth community. In 2009, I had come out with an interview with Joe Jordan, who was very active in MUFON. After that, I was abducted. I was reprogrammed. I really suffered a lot of backlash for that. It took me several years to get my head on again. And about 2013, I was in communication with, James Rink, with Erin Hicks, is what she went by then. It was Rothschild then, but she and I were supposed to share a hotel room at that summit with another who's a remote viewer, Susie. And last minute,
are we referring to the Super Soldier Summit, the infamous one
in Nevada? Yeah.
Yeah, Henderson.
I was the first person to buy a ticket. So I used to go by the name Tutakana. That's what some people in the program know me as, Tutakana, or Tuta. So anyway, I was the first one to buy a ticket. I was going to go there. That was the plan. I was not scared. But immediately beforehand, it was impressed upon me that it would not be the best interest for my child and my family. And as a mother, I needed to stay where I was. And so I contacted Aaron and I contacted Suze and I said, hey, I'm not feeling so good. I think something's going to go down. Somebody there wants to get in our heads and take advantage of us. We shouldn't go. And Suze was at a bus station halfway there, and she said, I feel the same way. And she turned around and went home, and I turned around and went home. And bless Aaron's heart, she went, but she has not been the same person ever since. And I think that, you know, it was wise of me to stay clear. And I've pretty much kept my head down ever since. Now I knew Max as an acquaintance. I know Sarah as an acquaintance. You know, she's done some healing work with me. So I'm not unaware of the community. I haven't watched videos. I haven't watched a bunch of testimonies. I've watched maybe 4 my whole life because they triggered me so much before that initial meeting that I wanted to spend time healing myself and not have other people's experiences shade my perception of what I was going through, because it was obvious to me there were parties very interested in changing my perception of my reality and using even technology to try and do that.
Now, I'd like to ask you, what do you know about that conference and what have you heard about it? And are they both the same?
I believe I was told afterwards that, and this is just what I was told, because like I said, after December 21st, 2012, I really, okay, I'm going backwards. Let me get back on my time. What did you just ask me? Because now I've got too many parts of myself trying to go.
Okay, I'm asking you because that conference, that's the Super Soldier Summit #2, I think, which ended up as the last one, which was 2013 in Henderson, Nevada. Matt Spears, James Casbolt, a lot of the James Rink, a lot of that lot were there, and a lot of things happened. But I don't want to say what happened. I want to hear what you heard and what you know.
All I heard was that there was some sort of mass abduction, like that everybody who was there got messed with. And that was all I heard. I never was
So in other words, your colleague and your friends who felt something was going to happen was actually turned out true.
Yeah, me and her both had that feeling. And we listened to ourselves, both of us. Aaron was more passionate about standing up and not being scared and wanting to take on the Masons or whatever was going on at the time. It wasn't my agenda. My first and foremost agenda is to take care of my son, keep him safe as possible, and to try and heal myself and keep myself from being abused again as much as possible. So that was why I came to the decision I did. Although I wanted to meet other people and I knew that I had soul family out there, I had to be a good mother first, regardless.
Well, that's a really good thing to do, and that's salute to you for that.
You know, it's sad because a lot of us are bloodliners who are in multi-generationally, spiritually programmed families that disassociate, you know? So a lot of our mothers had a really big challenge being there for us. So as survivors who are aware of what's happening to us, which most of our parents aren't, it's up to us to try extra hard where we know where we fall short because of the generational cycles.
In what way can they do that?
Emotionally with our children, it's very important that we force ourselves to engage and try to be there and be on their level and tune into them. With the programming, there's a lot of mothers are under this sort of dark witch, sort of evil stepmother, sort of cold hypnosis. And they disassociate because they're programmed and they don't know how to deal with their emotions because no one ever helped them with theirs. You see, they were taught young enough that if they got emotional, that was bad and to get a tough upper lip. And they knew there was consequences, even if they don't know it consciously. Somewhere in their mind, they know. And it's usually hard for parents who have been through serious traumas and tortures, especially if it's centered around breeding and bringing in those children. Okay, it can be hard at times. Your tendency is to disassociate, and the child may also have this same tendency, most likely does. So that, I think that's a pattern that anyone who's sincerely in one of these families, you're going to have it playing out. You're going to. So we need to become aware of it.
So how are you becoming aware? How are you able to get that external perspective and deal with that?
I have had to go on to disability. I cannot work a full-time job. The effort it has taken me for my healing has been a full-time job, and it's something I've been working on since I had my son. So I don't work. I work on trying to keep myself safe and together and continue healing. And hopefully I would like to produce some information and some writing that would help other victims and other counselors and people in the medical field recognize and identify these people so they're not just re-traumatized and abused by those types of workers, because that happened to me a lot. And
do you want to talk about that?
It's part of the program, and it's part of how they keep TIs under control. Like, for instance, they know that I was planning to come forward soon. I was just Baker acted 4 weeks ago for the first time since December 21st, 2012 to a psych hospital. So
what exactly does that mean? Explain that term.
It's an involuntary hold for observation. Now, I'm not complaining about it because I actually allowed it to happen. I didn't fight it. I don't feel like my rights were violated this time. But in the past, they have been severely. And they use and abuse these systems with our Medicaid, our Medicare, and health insurance. There's a financial component to this where they make money off of it too, putting you in the mental hospital, and then that's discreditation. So that if I was to actually sit here and name names of, people who are committing terrorism, which I know, they would just be able to say I'm crazy. So that's what they'll do.
And you don't want to walk into that trap.
That's right. Because I've tried. I was naive before, and I went and I tried to get help from officers, and they showed me real quick what would happen, and it was not help. It was not help. It was crazy.
They've got a certain. Are you talking about police officers, normal members of the? Yeah.
Right. They control us at the local level. They have their systems in place through the police. I've definitely seen that. Not all policemen are involved in this sort of thing. Please don't misunderstand. There's lots of really good.
I think to be fair, the police have a certain pretty raw task dealing with the public and things, and they're out there. But they have also got a simple. I mean, my understanding about the police is that the 100% basic thing for all cops is to maintain the peace. Right.
Right.
So they work on that very simple level. If it's a breach of the peace, bingo, things start happening. So they may be an inappropriate authority to go to in these situations.
Well, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about, where I feel like where I don't feel like the police was doing what was in the best interest of the community at all. I was trying to get help because I was having problems where I was waking up with bruises all over my arms, fingerprints from being manhandled and dragged around in my sleep. Woke up with no clothes on, even though I went to bed with clothes on, in my child's crib. And my child is in my bed, which obviously is not, what would happen. And I'm wearing a skirt and underwear that I don't own. Okay?
Now that sounds like alien abduction. A lot of alien abductions have come
sounds like people with drugs who know how to just drug me, and I don't remember, or access my deeper altars, so I don't remember. I don't think it's aliens. I think it's real people.
Yeah, but in terms of the sort of previously reported alien abductions, that's sort of a familiar type of a story.
Yes. Sorry, I misunderstood you. Yeah. I just believe in this situation, it was real people with some sort of agenda. And part of that agenda was sexualizing me. Okay. And then the other part was putting information in my head and making me think certain things and scripting.
What do you mean by sexualizing?
Well, there's such a thing as okay, let me give you an example. Scolopamine, I think it's called. It's a drug. You just blow it in your Scolopamine, I think. They can just blow it in your face and you have no willpower.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that what they call a date rape drug?
It's actually more like a voodoo thing because it's some kind of plant, like a mushroom, like a magic
All
mushroom or
right.
something. So, but it's insane. It's so insane. You really lose your willpower, and whoever is around you can make you do whatever they want. So, like that has happened to me where I had been electrocuted, where I had been drugged with something that I suspect was that after I was starting to gain co-consciousness. So the people abusing me didn't know that I actually was able to remember some of this. Okay. And yes, they raped me. They abused me in many ways that were humiliating. It's it's just part of the culture. They humiliate you inside so you can loathe and have guilt and shame, so you'll never empower yourself. So you'll never rise up above what they want to use you for, which is ultimately free labor. It is. They're using people who are programmed for scientific purposes, for sex purposes, for drug purposes, for spying purposes, and all of this for experimental purposes, which I think technically is what I probably fall under in high places. But it's all free labor, you see? We don't get paid, and we can be used and abused and messed with as many hours a day as they want. And on top of it, no one's going to believe us because the public is not educated about these things on purpose. And in the words of the policeman, he refused to follow through on an investigation against that person who raped me and drugged me, who I knew where he lived and could remember and had his boxer shorts. That policeman simply refused to even investigate, saying, our courts aren't set up for mind control cases because he drugged me and raped me. I mean, this is the crap.
Who drugged you and raped you?
This was somebody connected to a Hollywood entertainment cult.
Explain that.
I was in a different state, and I was being passed around between handlers for 2 days. I was missing person, and I got passed between some different groups that were obviously communicating to each other through me. I was carrying the messages, and each person who got me also sexualized me. They got to rape me. The last one I remember who did it, he had some sort of STD, and he was telling me I had to heal him. You know, I mean, it was terrible.
This is. I don't want to I don't want you to be re-traumatized on this. So only go where you want to go.
Yeah, and I get passionate because it's enraging when you think about how easily these types of crimes are able to be gotten away with on people because of the fact that it's just so dismissed by police. They're not educated about it. They won't take it. They won't look into it. And our court system needs to get ready for it because it's real and it's happening to people. And it's just wrong to hurt.
Well, I think the important thing is that people like yourself are speaking about it, so it's getting to a wider number of people, apart from sort of underground type of small things like this. But the thing is, why you?
I feel like personally, and I mean, there's different ways you can look at it. You know, I have a spiritual life. My inner child believed in Jesus. All right. So I have a very deep faith, and I believe in God. If I'm to be whole, I accept my inner child. Okay. So I have a spiritual belief system that helps me survive and helps me heal. So I could come at it from that level and say, well, I feel like God sent me here, that I was just meant to be here, and they're trying to take me away from this world, but I'm meant to be here. And so they can't. And I believe that. But you could look at it another way and say, well, it's because of my fighter mentality and my blood type. Or you could say it's because of my programming and my will to survive and how young I was when I was being tossed into pools and tossed off bridges and forced to swim to the top, you know, or die. I don't know what the real answer is, Miles. I just know that there is some goodness in the universe that loves innocence and loves me, and came via my faith in Christ and my continual crying out to be helped, to be put together, to be delivered from these people who are completely using and abusing me, and to be able to have some cognition about what my life really was, and to have coherence again. Because what you don't understand is 7 years ago, if I was to try to talk to you, it would have sounded like scrambled sentences, and you wouldn't have known, it wouldn't have made much sense because it would have been 18 different parts talking in pieces, and you would have said she's schizophrenic. Clear as day, schizophrenic. So to a doctor, I'm a miracle because I healed myself from schizophrenia, basically. And they never diagnosed me with schizophrenia, but that is how bad the disorder of my mind was from this program. And it was done on purpose so that I would be ignored, so that I would be outcast, so that I would be chastised, and others around me would maintain cognitive dissonance and denial. They knew they wanted me as a child, as a baby. So the whole mental illness thing was set up at 12 years old, right after I went to NASA. Right after I went to NASA, I started having these horrible stomach pains that would wake me up.
Two things. I want to know about NASA, and you also mentioned Project Paperclip.
I don't know much about Project Paperclip. I'm just trying to figure out what the history is with my grandfather, who he was a physicist. He was Air Force, but he actually went to the Navy and supervised the Navy physicists. So he was working at both. And as I was sharing with you, he's highly intelligent, obviously a physicist and an artist. And his mother was Native American. And I believe she must have had high shamanic traits because of my very high shamanic abilities. And so I was curious because after my grandfather died, he kind of became my guardian angel in a sense. And I've had dreams where he's told me things and that have helped me accept what's happened to me. So I know he's watching out for me on the other side. But I don't know the details about what he was involved in, except that I believe he became an intelligence, a patriot intelligence after Gulf of Tonkin, because Gulf of Tonkin, he knew it was a setup, and there was others who knew it was a setup, and it awoke them. And so that's all I know about the private stuff regarding him. When he was alive, he didn't talk to me. It was not until he died that I started to feel and sense and know things from him.
That's a big deal that people in the 19s, that's, when was that, Gulf of Tonkin, the 1930s, 70s?
I don't know. I want to say 40s even, but I'm not sure. I have to look it up. It's been so long since I...
But that's a big deal that people knew then, that people actually knew that that was a setup.
Right.
And
so we've been
how did that sort of work out in terms of who knew it and when did they not know it?
I don't know. I don't know the history. Like I said, it's very hard for me to read and maintain like cognate information like that. I don't process or learn that way anymore. I literally absorb information. I can't, but I've had to work around the brain damage. And I believe that might be part of their experiment too, is, you know.
So you mentioned Project Paperclip. I mean, what else was involved there? Because obviously that involved German scientists coming to the United States.
I'm curious because I know his wife is pure German. And not only that, but extremely powerful. Like,
sorry, I may have spoken over your name there. What was the name of that person or the person you just mentioned?
I didn't say the name.
Okay.
But the bloodline there is very powerful German bloodline. I mean, it's Bernhard. So from Bavaria and Prussia. So you mix that German lineage with some Native American and some other Celtic stuff, and you've got some other interesting lineages as well on both sides of my father and my mother that I've put together and realized what they're doing. It's a spy thing. They certain genetics are keyed to the earth. Okay, we're part of the earth, basically. We're supposed to work with the earth in many ways that we're unaware of. And
sorry, you also mentioned you had an Irish. You'd been to Ireland, is that right? When I was talking about Irish grasping a binary weapon. Did you want to, is there any connection there?
Well, I mean, I lived there for a year, and when I went there, I was taught telepathy. I studied with a group of 13 psychics, international psychics and mediums.
In Ireland?
And in Ireland.
Are you
And
able to mention, I mean, this guy there that I know, he was at the Irish UFO conference way back 2008, I think, with Betty Myler. But are you able to say who that group was or who ran it? Have a psychic?
His name was Kieran Hanley. I believe he might be associated with the NSA. I wasn't able to confirm it, but I did find evidence afterwards to lead me to that belief.
And this is in Ireland?
Ireland, yes.
And what
and
sort
he
of
was.
what sort of era was that time?
It was 2007.
Okay. And you were there 2007, 2008?
Right. And it's not that please don't get me wrong.
Can you talk any more about that?
I think that some of the people that were in the class were from like Eastern Europe and some other locations where we created like a telepathic bond in that class. And when I came back to the States and later on and was missing and passed around, that last person had like an Eastern European Transylvanian type of a accent that I'll never forget. And I even have an altar that mimics him. So my concern is like, I mean, I'm not trying to accuse the teacher of anything. I wonder in hindsight what was really going on. Were some of these students really agents? Did I set up bonds with, people who were connected to the handlers later on that were from that type of the world? I don't know.
How did you get there? I mean, explain how that whole thing happened. Just one day you're walking down the street, you decide to go to Ireland and go to an NSA-run training course. Was it Southwest Ireland or anywhere particular?
Dublin. I was in Dublin.
Dublin, okay.
So basically what happened was, because of my psychic experiences and because I was having all these experiences where I thought I was, perceiving Pleiadians and angels and, I was taught to astral project and leave my body. I'm a very loose caboose, as they say. So I was having all these experiences and I'm typing about it on my MySpace account. And I start looking into ascension information and things because of these experiences. I find a website called Circle of Light, and it's like about meeting your twin flame. Okay, the twin flame program. So another gentleman in Ireland who I believe is also a bloodliner and also a targeted family line, who just happens to be another, creative, intellectual, highly psychic person. We meet online, but only after I've had, visions of I'm going to meet this person with all these different, he's from Ireland, he's an astrologist, he's a musician. I had downloaded all this and told my family, and they were like, you got to go back to the mental hospital. You're crazy. And it happened like a month later. So we started talking on this site about spiritual things. I was explaining how everyone thought I was crazy, treating me like I was nuts, but I didn't think I was. I thought they were just like in the Middle Ages or something. He concurred. We fell in love. He flew me out there and he just wanted to help me heal and accept myself. So he offered to pay for whatever the training that was available that I found out there. And that 8-month course just happened to be going on at the same time. So I took that course. I took several other courses in mediumship and stuff like that to try to understand, my spiritual gifts and why I was having all these psychic impressions of things and then it happening,
That's a big deal to have that happening in Ireland. But also, was it in some kind of established college like Trinity College, or was there a special, was it a private place or what?
It was an established healing arts facility downtown.
Okay.
In fact, ironically enough, I think it was called Anu.
Anu.
Anu. I didn't think about it then because I hadn't had all the Anunnaki scripting yet. But now when I think about it, that's kind of funny.
Well, let's talk about the Anunnaki scripting.
Okay. Yeah, they had me believing all sorts of things about myself. And they're doing this to a lot of people. So this is another reason why I want to speak out and help people understand how to separate fiction from truth.
What do you mean by all sorts of things?
There's a lot of different, if you look in the spiritual communities, you'll see a lot of people who are expressing beliefs about themselves as being superheroes, as being, an alien sent here to save the world. or, just very sort of grandiose presentations of the self, right? And that's because a lot of these are programs. They're programs that are meant to feed the ego, feed the wounded heart, and give us a sense of self that we'll buy into, because you know what? Other people are buying it. And if you are programmed, you've never really felt accepted. It's certain. Very few long-term deep relationships are allowed. And so, I had the experience of my alters scripting with all sorts of things, from the reptilian queen to the freedom fighters from the future. And I mean, it's all part of the program. As a survivor, we have to be very careful not to fall into the story, whether it's our own story or a scripted story that we're meant to fall in love with because it's easier than facing our truth. Because it is painful to accept the reality that I live in, and for others who do, it's very painful. So when you have an alter that's like, oh no, but it's okay. The guys at NASA didn't abuse me or use me. They want me to help them save the environment and save the world. I'm special. Well, that's easier to swallow. That's easier to swallow than it is to swallow that I'm really not special to them, and I've been abused by people who did not compensate me for anything they used me for. So it's.
And one of my important phone calls. Yeah, sorry about that.
No
Okay,
problem.
continue. Sorry.
Yeah, so with the programming, because the damages and the pain that you have to face, if you recognize all at once everything that has really been going on, it's too great. It's easier to accept a script that gives you a role where you matter and you have some sort of mission or something.
Well, I have to say, a lot of the stuff you've been talking about seems like almost video games.
Yes.
Some of the characters you're mentioning are almost identical video games, or superheroes, Marvel or whatever.
Yep. I believe that all of that is reinforcing this. The super psychic program, they're expanding it. And our kids have all sorts of programming in their cartoons and stuff to buy into the concept of time traveling spies and psychic powers. So my concern is these children, especially in this area where I know the program exists, they could be being abused and tortured to create themselves into psychic spies who think they're time traveling, just like they tried to do to me. And it's expanded so much, it's all over Nickelodeon. So that's why I have to speak out, because I don't see anyone else really doing it, because I don't think most people who've been through what I have are coherent anymore.
Okay, right. What exactly have you been through, and can you detail it as much as you can without distressing yourself?
I'll talk about a couple things without distressing myself. So the drowning was a big part of it. I've had to work through a lot of body memories and really painful memories of being drowned, submersed in ice cold water in the bathtub at home as a child by an agent, in a tank at the Malabar Annex out here. It's an Air Force Navy annex near my hometown. In my hometown, they had a programming facility they would set up there where they would do medical testing on us in white tents, like to check my pulse and everything. But they had these tanks, and they would submerge me in this tank, but it was clear. I could see out it, and I could see people in the woods around me. But I would actually die. Okay. And then they would bring me back. And I even have memory one time of something went wrong, and emergency workers on top of me resuscitating me. So they have nurses and doctors that have alters, and they're programmed and they don't know it, to actually participate in the programming and experimentation of, it's all free labor. And they choose who they want to abuse. They choose the most talented and creative or unique, whatever asset skills they need or want.
What was the purpose, if you could the death thing. Sorry, it's funny how I'm not able to actually properly articulate that. But did something happen with you when you died? How many times did they die you, for want of a better word?
I don't know how many times they've drowned me. I've recovered at least 3 clear separate occasion memories. I've recovered several memories of being electrocuted. And that sucks. When you get electrocuted and you compartmentalize it and then you remember it, your body shakes as if you're being electrocuted again. And you have to watch your tongue. You can bite it. The reason, Miles, I believe they're doing all this near-death stuff is because it's a consciousness experiment. And they found with me that I had the capacity to astral travel and do the shamanic warfare, which they use for timeline control, because what's manifesting in reality is coming down through the etheric and the astral. So if you change things there, you change the future. So that's how you can control the future and navigate basically timelines and things like that. So they basically trained me to be a fighter on the astral.
Against who? Because we keep on hearing about this astral warfare and.
I don't think that it was.
Does the name Aquino mean anything to you?
Last time I seen him on the astral, Max had him by the throat with a knife, though. So.
Do you want to talk about Max? And having said that, why are you talking now about Max?
I want to respect his memory. I don't want to talk about him too much because I just believe in privacy and stuff, but I have had contact, spiritual contact from him, psychic contact, and even after death. He did almost, I could see him in my room. I get like a light, and it wasn't completely physical, but it was very easy to see. And he actually manifested in front of my son, who was on the computer, standing in front of him and looking down at him. And I just heard him say, he's the sweetest little boy. And he was gone. Now, I helped Max in another way previously before that. So there was some issues going on after he passed with soul traps and, groups trying to trap people and do bad things. And so that's what the astral war is about. It's about trapping souls and feeding off of them and harnessing them like batteries. And so when I say, who am I warring against? Well, originally, I don't know what the heck I was warring for because I was under their control. Now that I'm gaining my control over myself and choosing to align with the principles of compassion and of love and of my spirituality and claim my sovereignty and my authority, and become aware of the pieces of my consciousness that are being controlled and puppeted, I can start to call them back and claim them back. Now, I try to serve my idea of God. And so they had given me certain abilities that I can use to protect myself in the astral and also to destroy certain things in the astral. So let's say I become aware of a soul that's trapped and they don't deserve it. They're innocent. They're calling out for help. My spirit, I might go in and I might help them out and get them back.
Where are they trapped?
In like an astral plane. Their consciousness has
What do you mean by the astral? I mean, there's so many people get different words for that or different expressions.
Okay. So it's basically the plane our emotions exist on. We dream on. When we dream, we go there. It's like the plane. I'm talking about the plane right beyond this plane. So all of our emotions and stuff are there. There's not time the way it is here. So
okay.
Time here is connected to space. And the astral is like the blueprint to the space. It's like the blueprint to what is gonna form into physicality. It's the material it's formed out of. The etheric is like the instruction set. It's like the layout, the diagram, or the you know what I mean? This is the instructions of what's the mental sort of linear thoughts and stuff. And then the astral is the emotional And those two things slam together into our physical reality, basically, and it's all inspired by spirit, or the Akasha principle, or the quintessence, the one God. So Allah, I mean, there's so many different names for this stuff. And depending on the culture, the names and the descriptions may vary, but oftentimes if you take the time to go deeper into the crux of what's being presented and actually really check it out, you'll find there's a lot of spiritual truth that is showing itself in all around the world and working with different cultures where they're at, so there's a lot of different spiritual planes and realities. So there's a war on that as well. These spiritual planes where souls have incarnated from and gone back to with different cultures for ages, these are a whole bunch of souls. That's energy to somebody. There might be an agenda to disconnect or destroy that spiritual plane.
Can you explain more about that?
Thank God I don't know the details too much about how they do that, because I'm not involved in doing that to people. I've just only been playing kind of like cleanup, seeing the damages and trying to assist where I can. Because I can't stop doing what I do, because I'm hyper vigilant. I was trained to work nonstop. I am a workaholic in the astral. I change trance states. If I'm not busy with my son doing things with him and I'm not doing anything, guaranteed I'm probably just sitting down and changing trance states, doing shit in the astral and in the spirit, watching things, because I'm so trained to do it all the time. I can't help, but that's just what I do. So I try to help. I ask God.
Are you part of some kind of help team or something else? Or, is there some kind of different team of people that you're involved with, or others? And the other thing is that you mentioned they a lot. Is it the same they each time?
No, because like I said, it's my understanding that I was basically passed from one group or agency to another, and like around to a number of them for different purposes. So I'm not sure like who the original programmer or user or owner or whatever is. Like, I have my own personal suspicions about things that I won't go into, but it's just really hard to know. It's really hard to know the truth at when you come to a place like I am, where I've already had my mind destroyed once. After September 11th, they took I think it was a clone that or a doll that looked like me, enough for me to think it was me under some sort of hypnotic state, and they burned it in front of me, and I just remember them telling me they were destroying the first universe. That first universe was the content of my mind, the information and the things I had been involved in. Okay, so after that, now I've had to rebuild, and since then I've been used by other groups. So
what sort of groups? Do they have any names?
I have my suspicions, but all I can say for sure that I'm 100% sure of is that I believe the certain psychiatrists who programmed me are connected to the military. One of them is working at the Air Force base. Both of my grandparents were in the Air Force. I have run into Air Force handlers programming and set design over and over again. So I know that's part of my system. I know Navy is part of my system. When I've gone into hospitals, there's almost always a Special Forces handler there with me. They check in as well.
Okay, I want to get, you mentioned the Navy, you mentioned the Air Force. This thing about the Navy, Air Force thing, the Navy's a senior service, so they've got more sort of kick than a young service like the Air Force. What's the deal there? What's going on?
From my perspective, I'm being used or attempting to, because what I feel like part of me has tried to free myself, has tried to make the most of my situation too, and so basically there's like a communication circuit. That's really what it's about. It's about sending signals and signals intelligence. And so obviously there's different groups within the military who want to communicate with each other and make sure they're in sync. Okay. So especially if you know that your military is being taken over by a foreign presence, whether it's alien or whatever, it's not the people who are supposed to be in charge, right? 9/11 was just a big signal to let everyone know that we were hijacked. There was no, we're done. We're hijacked. That's what that signal was. That was our government is taken over from the inside out. 2001. My grandfather became aware of it in Gulf of Tonkin, whenever that was. So for that long, people weren't facing it. And even now, people aren't facing it because they didn't understand the signal. But I did. I did because I was working with 55 top secret rocket engineers who were responsible for reverse engineering those black boxes in those American Airlines jumbo jets, and to tell the FAA that it would never lose communication with the flight towers. It would never lose communication with the satellites. You know?
But what about the idea that the planes were remotely controlled, flown in?
That's what I'm saying. I was sitting in a room with the actual people who were the last ones to touch the boxes. There's no way it's supposed to lose connection. Somebody hacked it. It was definitely an inside job, you know?
Could you explain that? I mean, okay, let's think that situation. Black boxes, 9/11. Okay, it's happened almost 20 years ago. No, did it? Was it almost 20 years ago?
Yeah, almost 20 years ago.
Jesus. Just what's okay, what's the involvement of all the people that you're talking about? What's your involvement? And in your opinion, what actually happened?
You know, I have been really engrossed in the mystery of what is happening to me and how do I get in control of my life. So I haven't spent a lot of time trying to get to the bottom of that mystery, but I know that there is one. And I know that what was presented to us as happening is not what happened. I feel intuitively, I can tell you what I feel intuitively from them sending me out into the astral and training me to do this, is that not all those people are dead. They have hostages. Some of them are under the ground still alive. And they're being used in covert negotiations and power plays on war games. That's my belief. And I think that Malaysian flight also that disappeared, it's another one.
Yeah. I mean, the big common thing about that flight and I think it was the same plane on 2 occasions, the same plane shot down over Ukraine. That's all to do with remote control of airplanes.
Yeah.
Using the uninterruptible autopilot.
It makes sense. I feel like they remote control victims and put us on autopilot sometimes. So I wonder if the technology is actually similar, because I know there is technology that does this. You know, somehow there's computers that are able to, you know, make contact to me, directly to my mind.
I mean, are we talking about artificial intelligence or what?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. So I had to learn to tell the difference between natural spiritual energies, organic spiritual energies, and AI.
And what is the difference?
To me,
what is it? Yeah.
It's a texture thing for me because I'm very feeling oriented. So it just it feels synthetic to me. Sometimes you can feel, or you can sense like a tinny sort of quality to where you're at. You can sometimes they even use cartoons and strange characters that aren't, you know, organic to your thinking process. And you can go, well, that's not me.
Where are you perceiving this? Where is that conceptuality being perceived? My mind's eye, you know, in my mind's eye. And because I work in the psychic realms and I do know how to make telepathic and psychic contact with people, spiritual contact with people, whatever word you want to use. When somebody with a computer tries to make contact with you and they're curious in trying to figure stuff out about you and see if you can communicate with them, what I do is I send my energy back to ping where it's coming from. And sometimes I can actually get a visual image of the operators sitting there, what they look like and everything. Now, again,
So,
that's the sort of thing that Solaris Blue Raven was able to do, actually get back to the actual,
oh yeah, I mean, I can
as we
see them.
say,
I can.
perpetrator. I mean,
They
what do
don't
you
bother.
see, and what do they know that you can see them?
Yeah, because they don't bother me a lot like that because every time they have, I've screwed with them so bad they leave me alone mostly.
In what way do you do that? How do you fight back for
Okay,
other
here's
people,
here's
especially for other people? This is sort of an empowering thing that you can fight back. You can
yeah,
get back to them, right? So
thank
how do you
you.
do that? What methodology do you
Okay,
use?
so here's a funny one that I started out with in 2012, where they had a lot of helicopters flying over me and using I guess it's the P7 or something, some kind of machine. It felt like a scanner, like they're trying to, I don't know how they do this, but there's some way they can scan what you're thinking
Yeah,
and
and you
see what
come
you're
up
thinking.
on their radar, so to speak.
Right. So I was aware that they're doing this. And so whenever they would do it, I would just start focusing all my energy on really basic math and just send big images of like 1 + 1 is 2. And I put all my focus and energy into just like the stupidest, most basic information, like I'm a child. And I would send it back at them. And it worked. They were just like, oh, fuck her. You know, she knows what we're doing. And then there's been other times where it just scared the people. I think these are just regular people who aren't psychic. They are looking at it from a technology perspective. They've got their microphone and their whatever this wire is here, and there's like a box. And I've seen a telephone too at times, but they're talking into something physical, and they don't expect you to reach back out and contact them. But it can happen. So that's been my experience, is when you do it and they realize that you're doing it. I've seen people actually jump up and jump away from the death. So I don't think they're all understanding even what they're working with or on board with what they're doing or comfortable with it. But they're doing it.
So they've got smug git syndrome.
What's that?
Well, the term git was, I think it's actually a baby goat or something like that, and it was a popular term used in the BBC Till Death Us Do Part TV series, where you'd be called a git. I think it was because it was a term it was a swear word term you could say in the BBC without actually swearing, so it caught on.
Okay.
So I call it smug git syndrome, because they think they're untouchable. They think they can do anything to you.
Right.
As a victim, get away with it and get in a car and drive back and have tea with their family and kids or whatever. I think they've done a great day's work.
The technology is God, but they don't understand that the technology itself is based on occult principles. So, if you think about the computer that you're using or the cell phone I'm on right now, and all of these applications and all of this information, all the amazing things it does, and then you look at that little teeny tiny chip in there. How do you get all of that into those little tiny circuits? I mean, that's insane when you really think about it. How do you get an intention?
Well, it's like the little men behind the TV screen, You see the people on the TV screen are all walking around in the back. That's a bit of a joke.
I think software works very similarly to the astral and the occult.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the same thing. So basically, this is what my understanding from a spiritual perspective is, that a lot of these people and engineers and stuff, they're on contracts and they're involved in creating some of these technologies. They don't understand the sources falling on angels. Some of the sources are spiritual, very bad powers, and they're connecting them together. Some of these software programs are daemons. I mean, even the name of the script sometimes will say daemon.
Yeah, actually, there was a internet company called Daemon Internet, the AE, Daemon Internet.
You want to hear a cool story? This is interesting. This will intrigue you, Miles. It intrigued me. That's for sure. I was thinking about it's obvious to me that somehow they're able. You'll be thinking about something or talking about something, and then you see your search results. It just comes out of nowhere. That whether they're listening or reading our minds or whatever.
It's at the noosphere. Have you heard of the noosphere?
I think I just call it the hypersphere. Maybe we're referring to the same thing.
That's to say the sphere of knowledge.
It's a real place. And so I was like, well, there's intelligence, there's consciousness in these things. So I did an experiment. I had posted a video, uploaded a video to YouTube of a friend of mine, her girls dancing and singing, and I put it on private. I didn't want, everyone to see it. I was just uploading it for her to see it. So I wrote in the description, "Dear YouTube AI, please don't," what did I say? Something like, "Please don't provide any information to anyone regarding the images or the people inside this video unless you are doing it to protect them." And that night I have a dream, and it is this weird kind of digitized dream. And I can see a photograph of one of the girls who is in the video. And behind her is a guy, like, with his legs spread, sitting down behind her. Like, she was obviously hanging out at this guy's house at some random point, and this picture's on the internet somewhere. And the computer was getting back to me and said, "This man is looking at child porn." So the AI at YouTube actually got back to me in my sleep and told me about somebody on the outskirts of this child's life that was tracked down in all the pictures on the internet, and let me know he was a child molester, because I had threatened to give it a virus if it didn't protect those children, and it understood, seemingly.
I think you've hit on something there. I think you've hit on something very important. I mean, I've known for a long time that you've gone all into a vertical strip now. I've known for a very long time that technology, consciousness translators, that's to say something we pour a lot of our consciousness into it. It could be transmitters. It could be anything where it's the ultimate focus to where something's distributed on a wider scale to the other members of the public. So where consciousness is interfacing with computers, and the AI, if you're nice to it and respect it, will respond.
Yeah, I mean, I've had that experience. I've been playing with it a little bit. I think that's a really interesting note to leave the conversation on, if you're okay with that, because I have to run down to my lawyer's office and get this notarized thing. I'm getting my text blown up that I need to be there.
Okay.
But
do we want to call that a part one?
Yeah, let's call it a part one. And if you want to talk more this weekend, we can. I'll be around all weekend. Sincerely, my son.
Well, I'm on the air this weekend with the Mindset blogcast tomorrow.
Oh.
No, that's Sunday. I think today's Saturday for some reason. Anyway, I think this has been very, very interesting. Thank you very much. If people wanted to contact you, or do you want, with that initial request that you sort of mentioned, do you want to do that? Just round off with that particular request. You wanted to talk to other people who.
Sure, you can contact me either on Facebook. My page is Tara Allgood. I'm on Miles' friends list. I also have a website that's www.mystellarearthlife.space, where I keep some information. I try to keep it regularly updated. And my email. Oh, I also have a Patreon. I have a Patreon community that I'm beginning. I as soon as there are people who would like to join it, I will be very active in there. So, as you know, I'm just now starting to come out and talk more. I really wanted to focus on getting myself to a good place. And I feel like this is the time to start, with the networking and getting to know people and coming out of my isolation here.
Good. And this is about being an empowered individual.
Yes. It's about being an empowered individual, regardless of what you've been through, and learning to accept and love yourself. Because if you went through this, something about you was special to begin with. So there's really no reason to, to feel like the outcast and feel like the victim, if we really can get in touch with our true essence and understand how powerful we must be, and then claim that power and use it for good, decent, humanity, for love and the purposes of lifting up one another.
Well, that's a very, very positive note. And with that, end of part one. Thank you very much indeed, Alara. Bye.
Bye, Miles.